Welcome to Splunk Talk. This is Hal. I'm here with Birch, and we are recording a podcast starting right now. This is episode 2. No, it's not episode 2. This is season 2, episode 8, and we're joined today by guest Chris Gales. So before we get into that, hey, Birch, what have you been up to lately?
One thing, I am from a technology, someone who's worked in technology for a while. I think I've hit a really painful emotional turn with all of my tech books. So anyone who's a frequent watcher of our video cast will know that I have big bookshelves behind me. And I think over the last few days, I've come to accept that I'm probably not, I haven't opened those books in like 5 years, and I probably won't be anymore. And maybe it's time for doing something with them and freeing up the space and getting rid of clutter. But it's,
they can be decorative. That can be the point of them. Yeah.
So it can be. I saw, with everyone working from home these days, I saw I
hadn't heard.
Yeah. A news report. Well, because we work from home anyway. A news reporter, they didn't acknowledge it, but they did in one of the late night comedy shows. She had all the books organized, but by color. And it was like max OCD. And they were mocking her on a late night show. And I saw it and I was like, I want to do that. I want my books organized by color.
Okay.
So if it's decorative, maybe like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's a difficult point for a technologist to shed the books of the technologies. But it's weird, right? They're not like storybooks that are timeless. Like these literally, like Java 3 is not going to help me today.
No, I have a utilitarian approach to the books that are on my desk, in that one of them, actually both of them, are books that friends of mine had written, and they are holding up my right-hand side monitor.
They really are your right-hand mon.
Yeah. So that's what, I have another book on my desk that I can't see from here, and then I have a small selection, not your full stack there, not in this room. Some technical books scattered around, but yeah, I've not used them, looked at them, know they exist in many, many years.
Yeah.
So,
can I just point out, it seems like it was planned, but it's not. But Chris Gales, who is coming on in a moment, is the leader of our entire product documentation, as well as the docs books that we have published that he'll talk about
with you so far.
I am just really tickled that we're talking about books before he gets here.
But technically we're bashing books.
Better than burning them.
Yeah. What if we were actually literally burning books when he shows up?
Oh my gosh. I don't know, he might know the answer to this question, but what do I do with these books? Because I don't like throwing things away. I always like donating them, or I can recycle the paper, but put them in.
Well, nobody's they have a shelf life, and then they're kind of no value whatsoever, distinct from fiction, right?
Yeah.
These tech books,
if it's no value to me, then it's probably no value to someone else too.
You can give it to Goodwill, but what are they going to do with it?
What I always picture is, I always argue with myself and I go, don't cut yourself short. What if someone in film class is trying to do a piece about college in the 1990s? They would need those books. And
there may be some exceptions.
That's really few and far between.
Yeah. Well, actually, my son used to work for a local charity called Books for Africa, and it was actually headed by a friend of ours, and he got books for free that were donated, and then raise the money to keep the ship afloat there. But then you put them on a container ship and send them to Africa.
Wow.
So,
you used the pun. You accidentally made a pun then when saying keep the ship afloat.
Kind of. Yeah, that was an accident.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Thanks.
So we're beautifully accidentally talking about books before we have Chris. And you beautifully talked about ships. So let's sail on. What's been going on with you?
Well, as you can see by my background, I am kind of I want to be outside more than I am. That's basically what's going on there. That is actually a short little looping video of just off my back porch. I mean, that's just the woods behind my house. So it doesn't take me long to get there at all, which is nice.
I was hoping that it's always fun when you can have a video of like, a cool place or whatever. But when it's like someplace and you have been and you can, when seeing it, feel it. You remember how the air tastes and smells and how windy or not windy it is. Yeah,
in this case, it was kind of windy. So, yeah, thinking about being outside.
Do you think...
and I'm kind of an introvert, so I actually spend a lot of time indoors already.
Yeah. Do you think that by having that there, it will desensitize you to your backyard?
Nah. I got a lot of backyard.
Nice.
I mean, it's not, only my part is, the quarter acre behind my house or whatever. But, behind that is woods. So I got a lot of backyard.
Yeah.
So it should work out.
The trees look very tropical.
But yeah, let's, get into like slightly more Splunk related talk as far as things that we have been up to. What about you?
So I've started to get involved with our DSP product, our distributed stream processor.
Yes.
Yeah. We have a DFS as well, and they both have similar acronyms and came out around the same time, or at least like within internally. We had been working on them around the same time, so I always mix them up and have to think about which one is which. But
one's stream processing and the other is federated search.
Yeah. But I still get mixed up on the letters.
Yep.
But anyway, I've started to get involved there just in the last few weeks. So I've only gotten so far as installing it. This week, I'm hoping to play with it and really enjoy, the fruits of its software.
Me too, actually. I have slots on my calendar that I put there for training, and I don't know about you if you have this problem, but they keep getting overlaid by other things. So I will save this time. Oh yeah, I'm totally going to work on my DSP training, and then it evaporates. It's just like just poof, just evaporates. Yeah. But I too am eager to get into that more. Haven't done a single thing hands-on with it other than just touching some streams a little bit, but looking forward to doing a lot more. We have a visitor.
Chris Gales is here. Hey
Chris, how's it going?
Good.
See ya.
How y'all doing?
A long time.
Indeed.
I'm doing all right.
So before you joined, we were accidentally talking about books, and then realized that we have the lead of literature at the company joining.
That's really nice. You have books. I'm looking right at them.
Yeah. I was talking about getting rid of them. That was the sad part. We predicted you might be upset by that.
I suggested maybe we should be literally burning them when you came on, just to see what, kind of just for effect. I mean, I don't know that you should do that indoors though, Birch.
No, I think if I'm going to do the horrible deed of burning a book, I should have to breathe in all of its poison, all of the poison of my action. I
would not burn books. I would not do that.
I would not.
There are better ways to get rid of them. Anyway.
Yes, there are. So Chris, having not been on this podcast before, we should probably get a little bit of an introduction to you from you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm the Senior Director for Documentation at Splunk. I manage the Doc Team. We produce all of the customer-facing documentation on docs.splunk.com and dev.splunk.com. We do some internal docs work as well. I've been at the company for almost 9 years. I've been in the tech docs field for over 20 years. I did a stint as a product manager somewhere in the middle there for a while. But most of my career has been in information development and delivery.
What?
So,
yeah, go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay, oh, you go.
No, you go.
Okay, you go. So, I think there's two parts to you or three parts to you that I'd love to unpack. There's the how did you get here? What was BS before Splunk? Telling us about your time here, what you inherited or didn't inherit, how that's grown, any interesting experiences. But it's always fun to also cap it off with like, okay, well, where do we see our future in a way that we can talk about legally without making unreleased claims or anything like that. And I see Deadpool has now joined us for anyone on the video feed, also reading a book.
He's just hanging out.
Yeah. So I guess just going in chronological order, what'd you do at college? Was it related? And what kind of notable experiences did you have before coming to Splunk that you feel confident helped inspire how things have shaped up here for you and influenced you?
Sure. So, my education is really all in literature and writing. It's not technology oriented at all. I've always been a technology aficionado way back to the very first days of personal computing. I really got into
the phrase personal computing, as noted by the phrase personal computing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in middle school, there was some kind of computer system that was like client server terminal. Anyway, yeah, personal computing, right? So I got into tech writing while I was in grad school. Actually, I was working for a historical archive project at UC Berkeley. And they were producing a big microfilm edition of Emma Goldman's papers, and I was a research assistant there, and it was run by a bunch of historians and archivists, and they had a database of all the records for all the documents, thousands and thousands and thousands of documents, and people kind of knew how to use the database, but not so much. And there was one other employee there who actually did. Like, he was the database guy. But he was, like me, he was part-time and our schedules didn't always overlap. So he taught me how to use the database. That was really my first formal education in any technology still in use today. So, I learned SQL and a bunch of things about how the database was running. And then I wrote things up for the rest of the people so they could do a better job using it. And that was my first informal tech writing experience. And then when I was leaving grad school, and I knew I didn't want to continue in the academy as an academic profession, I remember doing this work and enjoying this work, and I convinced someone to hire me as a tech writer, and that's where I started.
So going back to the database, I find it really intriguing because the way there's the words you said to describe the story, but there's like an undercurrent. Or like there's like a sub story, which is I'm hearing that you probably have a natural affinity or propensity for technology. And in my mind, I have to believe that if you weren't into it, like inherently into it.
Well, I mean, technical writing is not all forms of writing. There's a lot of other types of writing, fiction and nonfiction alike.
Well, I guess where I'm going with this in an unnecessarily long-winded way is like, I feel like I've come across this with people that I often think are in like creative realms. So there's like friends who are like musicians. Some of them are like very, very artistic mind. Like vast majority of my friends that are musicians are very artistic mind. And a lot of the people that I know outside of Splunk that are writers are very artistic writers. But every now and then I come across these logical writers and logical musicians and people who like they're a musician, but they're also like a math genius, or they're a writer who has this passion for the logic of the technology and really sinks into that. And so it's just a cool expression how like it defies my own expectations based on my own experiences.
So let me turn that into a question that I think might make sense based on what you just said. So
if you can make sense of any of that, go ahead.
So Chris, what type of people go into technical writing, and how do you build a team that works?
One of the really cool things about tech writing as a profession, I think, is that people come from all kinds of backgrounds, and there are many paths to success in this profession. So, on the Splunk Doc team, if I think about the group there, we have people who have humanities backgrounds like me, whether it's literature or history. We have people whose degrees are in cognitive science and journalism and astronomy and computer science. And we've had a musicologist on the team. We have people who've actually gone through technical writing programs and studies that formally in school as their major. We have applied statistics major on the team. So we have people who studied and journalism and were journalists. So there's all kinds of things that you could study to learn how to digest a diverse set of information and figure out how to organize it and convey it to an audience as transparently as possible. And we see that reflected in the team. So when I'm looking for people to join the team, I'm not hung up on a particular degree or necessarily a certain narrow set of domain expertise. What I'm really looking for is kind of the investigative mindset and the audience awareness, the ability to collaborate with a wide variety of cross-functional peers, and then the evidence that people can combine all this disparate information into something that will make sense that people can actually use.
So at some point, we should probably bring up that book thing. I was thinking maybe, I had some other directions we should go, but I wanted to set this out, to be the backdrop here. So I know that you've got a new edition of a book out, and sadly,
did you mean this book?
Oh, someone can prepare
docs. So I want to hear about it, but I want to hear about what led to that. And I don't, maybe that's part of the book. I've not read the book yet. So, tell me why the book and, about the project, not the second edition necessarily, just,
Sure. How we started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that goes back a couple of years. The first edition came out in December 2017, I guess. And leading up to that, I think there were a few things that we had been talking about within the team, whether it was how do we really want to fit our docs process into agile development. That was one thing. Another one was we were writing a set of audience definitions for ourselves, like who are the audiences that that we are writing Splunk docs for so that we could record a set of assumptions about them, similar to persona development, although I think there's some key differences there. And in the process of having these discussions, we're looking around at conference presentations and industry literature, and if there are any other books or articles, and we kept running into basically gaps in what had been published or what was available, where either the published material didn't really match the experience we were having and the questions we were asking, or there really wasn't anything that we could find in several surprising areas. So we were doing a products-wide hack week, and leading up to that, I basically pitched to the team.
A hackathon is when the engineers get together and write code. What does the doc team do?
Well, sometimes we work on project-related things with the engineers, but in this case, it's like, hey team, I bet we can write a book in a week.
Wow.
And enough people with keyboards, right? So we brainstormed a list of what these subjects were, and then people basically picked one, and the goal was get to the messy rough draft in a week. And like at the end of the week, let's just have the messy rough draft of your chapter, whichever thing you picked.
Did you pick the topics like at the start of the hack week?
Yeah, exactly. So prior to hack week, we did a brainstorming. Right. Prior to hack week, we did brainstorming as a team about what the list of subjects would be, what the chapters were. People signed up for them, and then hack week was writing week for that. And indeed, we came out at the end of hack week with a very messy rough draft that would become the book. And then we paired people up and did like peer reviews and revisions, and kind of, combed over it for a few months and made some improvements. And that's really where the book came from. So,
and was the goal to publish it initially, or did that come later?
Yeah, the goal was always to publish it, make it available to the profession. And I mean, it's a book that a lot of tech writers have used, but it's not just for tech writers. We say in the preface, like if you are a tech writer, you work with tech writers, if you're in any part of a product development group, there's something in this book for you. So it's the chapters for the most part are pretty short. There's no sequence. You don't have to read them in sequence. Basically a series of short articles that really, in which we were really trying to capture like what our practical experience was writing documentation in a product development team.
Okay. So how many co-authors were there?
In the first edition, I think 22 people wrote the first edition.
Mm-hmm. Now, did everybody, was it set up so that everyone had their own voice, or did you actually edit it to have a consistent voice?
I didn't edit it strongly for a consistent voice. I'm perfectly okay with the book sounding like different people wrote it.
There's nothing
different
wrong
people
with that.
wrote it.
You see, see that with like a collection of short stories, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really impressive thing, because I read it like a year and a half ago, maybe. And funny example of my personality, Chris kept saying, you don't have to read it in order, just pick out the relevant parts. And so what did I do? I read it front to back.
Order.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's a great read either way. I mean, you have to admit.
Oh yeah. No, it was. I mean, I liked it, but back to the voice thing. It felt very consistent at least from a layman's perspective. It felt like a consistent voice. And I guess I always attributed that to the fact that even in writing our Splunk docs, what everyone is probably already well versed in how to write in the same style.
You guys have a style guide?
We do. There's a Splunk style guide that we use. We published that as well just this past December for the tech writing community. So that's available on the doc site as well.
So I have a question. What do you think, if anything, that Splunk does differently about documentation? Is there anything that either you do on purpose or that kind of emerged as that might be unique to our culture?
I think so the first thing that comes to mind is our relationship with our customer community. And this goes all the way back to the earliest days. This predates me. Birch, in your initial questions, you were asking like, well, what did I inherit when I joined? So when I joined the company, I'm not the first manager of the doc team at the company.
What?
Which you
The
knew.
only one that counts, though.
Yeah.
No, really, that's really not true. So Rachel,
There were maybe 300 people or something we joined, somewhere around there?
probably, yeah. So Rachel Perkins preceded me,
Okay.
and really established the doc team at Splunk. And
I had no idea. Her name has come up quite a bit in this podcast.
Yeah, right. So she did a terrific job. When I joined the company, she was moving into a different role, more community focused than doc focused. But what she instilled really early, or from the get-go really, was like talking to our customers, responding to doc feedback, really being not just open, but permeable with our customer community. And I've tried to carry that through and expand that and just make sure that that's really one of our core principles on the doc team. And I think it really does set us apart. I've talked to a lot of other managers for a lot of other doc teams around the industry, various industries actually, and they really, for the most part, they really aspire to have the level of customer engagement that Splunk enjoys.
So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the doc's feedback. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I've never gone and like measured, company to company, but one thing that was unique, at least when I joined the company, was that every single, the docs are a wiki and everything has a feedback page at the bottom of it. And that facilitates the collaboration with the community. And that was very intentional, I know. And I would like to, we're a data company. You probably measure this. Do you have any stats that you could talk to about what that's looked like?
Sure. So, yeah, every page on docs.splunk.com has a feedback form at the bottom. We get about 90 of those a week, which the team responds to.
I'm only about 1 or 2 of those a week. I try to pace myself.
Yeah. And we appreciate you because you write really high quality feedback. So both of you actually. Anyway, I
usually try to just say this sucks and provide no constructive or specific detail.
Right. So anyway, we get about 90 of these a week, and if people leave contact information and there's an actual question or suggestion there, we always follow up directly. Thinking back. You're thinking about data. I'm trying to think what the trends have been. Like how much has that grown?
I will say while you think of that, that when I was a customer, I was like, I almost fell out of my chair when I got the first time I gave feedback, and I was like, oh, this is probably just going to go into the ether. Who cares? Mm-hmm. And like within the 24 hours, it was shocking. It was like maybe within an hour or something, someone sent me a personal email back. Like, oh, thanks for your feedback. Good point about X, Y, and Z. And I just remember that was another one of those points where I was like, this is a different company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just, oh, thanks for your feedback. It's like, thanks for your feedback. I wrote that.
Yeah.
And I want to take your suggestion or answer your question and like make it better. Right. Yeah. Splunk docs are they're only as good as our community helps us make them.
Were there chapters or sections or books in the docs website that wouldn't exist except for some of these feedback?
Oh yeah.
I've got one on top of my head, but I want to see what you say.
Yeah, well, there are lots of parts of the docs in the search reference, in the dashboards documentation where customers have really given us a lot of examples or asked questions that led to really specific examples. There's one entire manual that exists because a customer came up and suggested it. So a few years back at the user conference, we had several people come up that year and say something that was new. And this is an interesting marker in the growth of Splunk and its customer base. People came up and said, hey, so I'm taking over a Splunk deployment at my company. Whereas before that, like everybody who was using Splunk was the person who started Splunk at their company. But like a few years back, we started hearing like, oh, it already exists. Someone's moved on. Someone's gotten reassigned. I'm taking over this thing. And I'm not really sure where to start with the documentation and what I should look at first. Like I'm doing this next month, basically. Or I started 2 weeks ago and I've been taking classes, but I don't really know what to do. So we actually came back and about 7 or 8 different writers collaborated, and we got a lot of information from professional services and some other sources in the company. And we made this manual called Inherit a Splunk Deployment. And that's really meant to be the entry point for people who are taking over a Splunk deployment, but it's turned out to be really useful for people who are starting with it as well. There's also
I really appreciate that one. That's, I've enabled some customers many times with that particular chapter.
Yeah, so that one came directly from a customer question, and I really loved that project. We've also had, I'm trying to think on the app side also with enterprise security and ITSI and UBA, there's been a lot of customer feedback that's really reshaped the way we talk about the use cases that underlie those solutions, as well as the process of getting data in to use with those types of solutions.
Now, each of those has a different persona, perhaps. Do you write differently for the different products? Because, I mean, compared to the developer portal and the regular product docs, those are much different in style.
And we
or
should
maybe
talk
style
about
is
that.
the wrong word. So, tell us about that development.
We asked different types of questions. I mean, style, it depends what you mean by style. But
yeah, I actually don't like the use of word style there.
Right.
That is.
But we asked different kinds of questions.
Out of style.
Yeah, and this goes back to kind of those audience definitions that I was talking about, because truly, there's the Splunk, kind of the classic on-premises Splunk administrator, maybe our original customer. That person also comes in varying levels of experience. There's our customers who are really just doing search and reporting. There are developers. They're the kind of subsection of administrators, or in some companies maybe a special role that's really kind of managing the content in the deployment. So it's like what we think of as the knowledge manager. Right. And then you get vertical specialization as well. You got your security operations center person, your network operations center, so your DevOps persona is different again. So the solutions, the apps and solutions, where they are aimed at addressing a specific audience, possibly in a specific vertical domain, we try to really emphasize the use case and the solution part of that app for people, so that they can proceed to get the value out of this software that they bought for a specific purpose.
Okay. So I want to go back to, and did you have something, Birch?
Well, I guess I'm not sure if maybe this was effectively answered in the last part, but I've been picturing docs.
Sidebar for a second.
Yeah.
I have another podcast, and sometimes I have been known to space out during it, or my co-host, and we would ask questions that the other person had just basically gotten an answer from the guest. So I just want to let you know it's okay. It happens.
So you tell me, and I will have no shame. But how would you describe the differentiation between what we now have for dev.splunk.com versus what I keep picturing through our conversation of docs.splunk.com?
So like the difference in the content.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what are the if I'm how about this? If I'm relatively new to Splunk and I see these two sites, what's the difference? They both seem to have documentation.
Indeed, they do. So the dev.splunk.com is really aimed at developers. So its purpose is to provide a separate site with the content that developers need, whether they're like partner developers or in-house developers, to build Splunk apps and extend the capabilities of the platform. And the content there really focuses on helping people build up the knowledge that they need to use the SDKs and the frameworks that we've delivered. So there's it, as you would see on any developer site, it's very example rich. We want to give people kind of cumulative code samples that help them build up this necessary knowledge, and then all the deep reference material that they need once they really start working.
So from a like delivering a product whereby the product is docs, is it like what goes into that type of decision? And I don't know if maybe it was something you inherited, but I know we recently refreshed dev.splunk.com. Is the idea like how I was saying, like, is it persona based, or is it like, we want to have a different set of content patterns and expectations of the content? Like, how do you as someone architecting this?
How long have we been talking about that refresh, by the way, Chris? 2014, 15, somewhere in there. I'm glad it happened. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we're continuing to build that out. I mean, we relaunched it last fall, and there's a ton more work that we want to do, and that we're actively doing there, both on the engineering side and the content side. So I think this year is actually going to be a year where we are really able to push that the capabilities of that site and the content itself forward quite a bit. Birch, to your question, it is a different persona, and there are, the information challenge there is that there's actually a lot of interdependency. If you're really building an app for Splunk, there's a lot of interdependency with the content on docs.splunk.com and the content on dev.splunk.com. But dev.splunk.com gives us a separate place to talk about what is a Splunk app, what goes into it, what are the types of things that you need to concentrate on, particularly for our newer offerings. It gives us a place to describe all the endpoints to the services that you might need to call in the course of building your app. But you can only really build that app if you know how the underlying platform works, if you know about the search language, possibly if you know like how indexing works, if you're focused on
what
that
is a
side.
search job.
Right. So you're always going to have to read across both sites, but
yeah.
But at a certain point, right, you know enough about the underpinnings of Splunk that you just want to find the information you need to develop your app, and that's where dev.splunk.com, the separation of dev.splunk.com really helps people be more efficient.
Well, it's and I guess that's true with anything in the world. Like, I just fabricated a metaphor, but like, if I want to build a bike, I probably need to know what a bike is and how it generally works before I go get the manual on building one from scratch.
Yeah, you could do it the other way. I would look at that.
You could.
Have you seen that there was a project where somebody took children's designs of what I think it was like what a bicycle is or something like that, and then they built them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
And it's the craziest thing where you have the the kind of the unbounded creativity and imagination of a child describing what a bicycle is in a visual format. It is not, doesn't have a whole lot of a bearing on physics, for example.
Physics are optional when you're a kid. And well, it's like, I mean, tech writers love the video of the dad having the kid explain to him how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and just like doing exactly what the kid tells him to do, and starting over and starting over and starting over. So
I've not seen that. So share that one with me later. I will enjoy that. But I was going to go somewhere related to development. If I may, Birch, do I have your permission?
You have my blessing.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. So you mentioned earlier about converting over or kind of working with an agile development team. And I want to know kind of like what were lessons learned? How did that work out? Are there things you can't do? Are there assumptions that the engineering team makes that just don't work for writing docs? I mean, I have a hard time imagining honestly how it works. And I've written a book, a technical, manual, and I was working with something that was a completed product at that time, and then there was a earlier version, and then new version came out, and I had to change a bunch of stuff in my book. So that is what my instant thought was. And I was like, that doesn't sound like fun.
So the answer is it depends. So like my view of doing docs in Scrum is that there are some doc tasks, there are some types of content that are really, really well suited to Scrum, and there are some that really aren't. So, for example, doing API reference work is really well suited to Scrum. Work right alongside the development teams. A lot of times you can deliver the content within the same sprint that the team has developed it. You can build automation around it to test the documentation as well as the code. Can work really, really well in Scrum. Any small chunk of documentation that's very, very tightly bound to a feature is pretty straightforward to handle in Scrum. By contrast, if you're writing an end-to-end workflow tutorial, let's say, like an introductory tutorial to ITSI, like that's going to span, well, one, it's going to span the output of multiple Scrum teams. It's going to probably span multiple sprints. You might be writing it against a moving target, as you just alluded to. And you can do things to structure that work into sprints. You can make it incremental. You can make it iterative. You can dice it up into smaller chunks and distribute them across the teams that are tracking the different things. But like fundamentally, it really doesn't work that well, because what you're trying to get to at the end is this like coherent longitudinal piece of content. And so for those, I say, like, we shouldn't try to do that in Scrum. So I think you should use Scrum for what it's good for. Scrum wasn't made for docs. It was made for code. So where we can usefully do it, it adds a lot of value. And where it's really a struggle, I think it causes more work than it benefits us.
So tell me about the interaction between the docs team and other parts of the company. I'm thinking support, engineering, the field, customers you've mentioned already. What about other internal stakeholders?
Sure, absolutely. So within the products organization, the writers are embedded with Scrum teams kind of by default. So they're working daily, they are working directly with product management, engineering, and design, our UX team. And they're following the sprint cycle. They're gathering a lot of information. If their work is suitable to Scrum, they are producing content alongside the sprint cycle. So they're really right inside product development. At the same time that they're doing that, remember, they're getting customer feedback, right? Coming in, on a regular basis. And so they're spending some of their time working on improving existing content in response to customer feedback, as well as working on what's currently under new development.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I always say about the tech writers at Splunk is it's really important that we are using the customer knowledge that we've gained to help shape the product that the company's developing, not just write about it after it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that the writers are involved throughout the development process, because they're bringing this perspective from the customer, as well as capturing information and adding UI text and docs along the way. Mm-hmm. Going out to the next circle from products, we have extensive relationships with sales engineers, professional services, and customer support. When I joined the company, Docs was part of customer support. So the first couple of years I was here, we were actually inside the support organization, not the products organization. Mm-hmm. And we tried really hard to maintain that close tie, not only because support engineers are hearing about things that aren't working for customers. Support engineers also make great reviewers of draft content. But it's another place where we can maintain and emphasize that closeness to our customers that I think is really what helps us be successful. And professional services and sales engineers similarly. They're the ones who are on the front lines, who are really hearing about what customers are trying to do with the product. Like they bought it for a reason. They have an idea of what they're trying to do. And that's where sales engineering, professional services sit. So for us inside products, it's really useful to gather information from sales engineers and PS, because they know what the use cases are that customers are really trying to fulfill with our software. And to the extent that we can align Docs with that, I think it serves all customers better. Customer education is another group that we work with really closely, because they are often developing their course materials closely following on the calendar, closely following what we've been doing in Docs. Mm-hmm. And they also make really great reviewers.
Makes sense.
It's like anyone who has to sit and critically think about the Docs material as part of their job becomes a key stakeholder, a key reviewer for you, because you think about education. I'm sure that they're looking at, okay, well, what's documented? How am I going to summarize this in what I present in the course creation? And, and through that critical thinking, they make it. And then same with support. Customer asks about some feature. You might go, oh, what did we have in the docs about that? And you read through it and hey, maybe there's an opportunity for misinterpretation here, or mm-hmm. I know something because I know the product well that we should enhance, add to this. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Customer education, they're turning around and making labs.
Right.
Out of we don't make labs, right? Mm-hmm. The Doc Team documents the software, so they have to go turn around and make not only instructional material to present to the class, but also labs for people to work through. We are one of the sources where they can find out what's actually changing in the product, or what's been added, or in a new product, how fundamentally how it's going to work.
That reminded me of something I really love about the way we do docs at Splunk. Two particular things. One, I think, I don't know if it's still the case, but everyone who works here can technically edit, even though we don't necessarily want large edits done. I don't know if that's still the case.
Yeah, wide open, right?
It is still the case. As long as we are in this MediaWiki based platform, all employees have permission to edit the docs. They can't create new things. They can't make new pages. They can't change the organization of a manual, for example. But if there's an editorial change or a typo, or a default value is wrong or something like that, any employee can actually go and edit that.
And the other thing that I think is really nifty is the ability to see unreleased documentation. So when a new version or a new product is coming out, as other people in the company might be producing supporting material on that, like education, producing new education material for an unreleased or a new version of a product, they don't have to put a burden on the writer. Oh, can I have your latest draft of X, Y, and Z? They can actually sign in.
It's there
and see, just like we have the version drop down, we can see, oh, here's what's changing in the new release. That's okay, great.
Yeah, that's right. There's no staging server that you would need separate permissions to go take a look at something that was underway. It's there's just an unreleased version, and if you're an employee, you can see it. Yeah, and field enablement and support enablement and all the other groups we've talked about definitely make use of that.
I feel like it really embraces the open value. We have 5 values at Splunk, and that to me screams of open. Go ahead, Hal.
So speaking of the version dropdown, can you tell us how that works and what happens when a new version of one of our products is planned? What does the doc team do to get ready for that?
Sure. So if you're on docs.splunk.com and you're looking at the documentation for any specific product, there's a version selector. By default, it will take you to the latest released version of that software. But if you want to go back and look at an earlier version, it's available to you there. And as we just said, when there's a new version coming out, even before it's released and visible to the public, we have the unreleased version available internally. So when we're making the next version when we're planning the next version of something, the first thing we do is we create that new version in our doc system, and then we inherit all of the current version's content to that new unreleased version. And then we modify whatever pages or entire manuals that we need by essentially creating branches of that content for the new version. So if a topic has not changed at all from Splunk Enterprise 8.0.2 to 8.0.3, then we don't change that topic. And if you're looking at it in 802 or 803, you're actually looking at the exact same topic because it's just been inherited down and it's the same page. And then if we change it, we branch and then we work on the new branched content.
And then also our, I always am impressed. Is it our release notes and known issues are actually like dynamically pulling for that version against bugs and stuff that are tagged or labeled
I didn't used to. How old is that? That's not extremely old, is it? A couple years?
3 or 4.
Okay, well, we be here long enough, and that's not a long time.
Yeah, exactly. But Birch is right. Yeah, the known issues and fixed issues lists in the documentation are pulled automatically from Jira, from the tickets that are flagged to be included in release notes, and that updates every 15 minutes.
Yeah, I love that. It turns into something that is comprehensive, and the type of person that is trying to solve a problem themselves, and they need to have this specific information. They always know where the answer is. Was there some bug related to this in version 8.02 that was fixed, or 8.03? I know exactly where to go to find that answer every single time.
I used to do that.
Be a consistent. Oh yeah, every new version of Enterprise, I would review the release notes.
I would keep a list. So I would open a support ticket. I'd have a bug. They say, yeah, it's a known issue. Here's the bug number. It is now showing up on the known issues page. And it was a really cool way of empowering me as a customer, because they would say, keep and remember the ID number of that one, and return here when we have a new release to see if it got fixed, if it's still on that list or not. And sure enough, I would have like a spreadsheet or whatever of all the IDs, and I'd go and check on a new, oh yay, they fixed it. So yeah, no, it's super cool. Did you, circling kind of all the way back just on the history part, when you first joined, were you reporting to Rachel?
No, I reported to the head of customer support, Lena Hartman.
Lena, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rachel, she had moved out of the documentation team at that point.
Yeah, she essentially, she and Lionel hired me so that she could focus on community full time.
Oh, cool. And so you've been the head of that group since that time.
Yes.
The head of the docs group. Okay. And so we also talked about, I feel like when we talked about the book, I'm kind of doing loose ends here, but when we talked about the book, I think focused a lot on like how we got there and everything. But the big recent news is the release of the second edition of it. So I know something you and I have talked about, but like, what are the known issues and what's new in this release?
So sure, we did go back through a lot of the content just because we were doing a second edition. We did like go back through and like streamline some of the chapters and expand some of the chapters where we felt like we left something out. So throughout the book there are small changes. And I don't know, medium-sized changes. Like we reorganized the chapter on learning objectives, which was really kind of one of the fundamental ways that we think about and plan content. And we've gotten feedback from the like broader tech writing community that they found the chapter useful and also hard to use. So so we reorganized
There's
that.
something there, but I'm not quite getting it. Okay.
Yeah. And we added there's a chapter in there about essentially about managing teams. We added some information there about hiring diverse teams. There are just some oversights really that we wanted to correct. And then we added a handful of new chapters. The latter part of the book is a series of chapters called like working with engineering, working with marketing, working with UX, and so on. We didn't have one on working with the field, which, like, given the conversation the three of us have been having,
edition 3,
kind of an oversight. So we added a chapter on working with the field. We added a chapter on organizing temporary teams. There's a new chapter about writing for the cloud. And
is that chapter the first chapter? We have a joke for our listeners. We as a company are cloud first. So the joke being, did that chapter come first?
No, it doesn't come first because the chapters are alphabetical. But that chapter actually talks about two aspects of writing for cloud, which are really important for us. One is documenting SaaS products for customers, and the other is about writing for a cloud ops team, which we also do. So the cloud chapter covers both of those. So there are a handful of new chapters and some substantial revisions to some existing chapters, and then just some overall improvements. I also, this time, I had one of the technical editors on my team actually professionally edit the entire thing end to end. Because the first edition, I did that myself, and they're better at it than I am. So
I'm a better editor than a writer. Like I found that out while writing my book, that there's two different skills. And if you leave the editing to the editor, then you can write. If you do the editing yourself, then you end up not writing. And what came out of my head was very slow in pace. It was perfect feeling to me once I got it down. But doing that editing at the same time actually hampers creation.
Before I can get the first word written, when I'm writing even a blog post, I start doubting and editing myself, and I can't start. It's a real problem.
Yeah. Well, going back to the Hack Week, this is why the goal was messy, rough draft.
Yeah.
Like emphasis on the messy.
The Hack Week really culminated or catalyzed the first edition. Was there a similar catalyst for the second?
No, actually. I'd been collecting thoughts and ideas, and I'd been wanting to do a second edition for a while, and then basically last fall I just put it to the team. Like, we didn't have a hack week, we didn't have a specific event or period of time that we could organize around, but I just said to the team, like, hey team, here are my ideas, let's do this thing. The team had other the team had other ideas, and we went through a similar process, but not kind of focused in a week-long hack session the way we did the first time.
I feel like that makes it even more impressive, because when you don't have an event to trigger it, you can always, we'll get to it later. Mm-hmm. Did
call that a forcing function?
Forcing function.
Yeah.
I know about those from my fandom in Star Wars. There's a lot of forcing functions that they use. So, that's
a little dark, Birch.
Really? I thought it was light. It depends what side you're on. So you're also very plugged in the community. You're an honorary Fez, an honorary Splunk Trust member as of, was it just this past year or the year before?
No, Conf last fall.
Last fall?
Yeah.
Now, is the committee secret? Can we talk about the committee? I don't think it meant, I don't know if it came up when we had Jason on the show or not.
It did.
Are you asking about how Splunk Trust members are chosen?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Sure. Jason didn't talk about this.
Maybe we did. I don't remember.
Yeah, I thought he did. And
we probably used the word hammer fight on the
hammer
podcast.
Fight, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, let's review. But so people can nominate other people to join this, to be Splunk Trust members. This happens every year. People can nominate other people. People can nominate themselves. Then the current Splunk Trust membership basically reviews those nominations and does the selection. Then
which is the hammer fight part.
There's some information gathering first.
Yeah.
People basically review the nominee. Each Splunk Trust member reviews the nominees and kind of does their like yes, no, in, out ranking kind of thing. And then the hammer fight is where the all the kind of borderline
like the final draft
cases end up. It's like the exception review process.
Yeah. The ones that weren't clear answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I was where I was going with that is, you're very active in the community. Did you use any aspect of your inherent community love and your behavior and involvement in the community? Did you use any of that to influence the second edition? Like book clubs or anything?
Well, so there's a few different answers to that question, right? So we talk about community and working with the community in the book. We've expanded some of that material as well this time. We, on the doc team, you said book club. On the doc team, we do have a book club where we just read, optionally, there's a group of us that every month or two gets together to talk about a book that we're reading.
Oh, nice.
So right now we're reading Invisible Women, which is about the absence of women in data.
Oh, wow.
It's a really interesting book. Anyway, there are professional communities out there of tech writers. So one of the really big ones is called Write the Docs. And this was like the kind of the happiest and most coincident thing that happened with the second edition was basically after the writers had done their draft chapters and I had just taken them and was starting to review them and think about what overall changes did I want to make in the second edition. I was in the Write the Docs community Slack, and there's a channel in there called Learn Tech Writing. And on January 1st, two people in Learn Tech Writing said, hey, I think it would be really cool in this channel if we basically did an online book club. So let's just try it. And the first book we're going to read is The Product is Docs. And we're going to read one chapter every day for the month of January. And we're going to talk about it in here.
Wow.
So like throughout the month of January, like every day they were discussing another chapter in the first edition. And like we gathered so much great feedback and so many suggestions and things that we just might not otherwise have thought of. And it was really exciting to just watch this amazing discussion unfold. And I lurked all month. I didn't identify myself early on, and just I went back and forth about what to do, you know.
You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube.
I know. So it felt a little questionable not to, but it also felt like the conversation would be much better if I wasn't in it at all.
Yeah, if people knew that you were there, it changes how people say things.
Yeah, so they still kind of tease me.
Hey, Chris, why did you do this thing?
Right.
Or whatever.
So at the end, I was like, you know, y'all are amazing. We're working on a second edition. Like, we're going to incorporate as many of your suggestions as you can. Like, this has been fantastic. And people were kind of like, and they still say, like, now that they're talking about other books, they're like, you never know who's listening.
Yeah.
But what's been nice also is that, you know, on into February and even into March, as people have, like, they're reading other books and now they're kind of saying, oh, like, this is interesting. And The Product is Docs. They said this, and now we're reading this. And like that sheds an interesting light on it. Like, hey, C. Gales, because now they know, right? Hey, C. Gales, like, can you talk about that? So, so the conversations continued now that I'm in it. But like, we were ever so grateful to them for like organizing this completely on their own, and we were so lucky to stumble in it and be able to make use of what they suggested.
I know we're coming up on time here, but we'd be remiss if we didn't point out all the incredible affluence the profits from the book have given you.
Oh, yeah, all those royalties.
Yeah,
I know. It's tough. Like, we haven't been on Oprah's book club yet, but no, the point I think Birch is trying to get to here is that we donate all the royalties to charity. Like, nobody's profiting from this book at all. That's really not its purpose. Its purpose is to further professional discussion, and the money that does come in, we've been donating to a succession of charities. And right now we're donating the royalties a little more frequently to organizations that are directly supporting either healthcare workers or other aspects of the COVID-19 crisis.
It's awesome. Is there a version 3 and third edition that you've started to think about?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's a bit early. He just shipped one.
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
I waited a year last time before I started thinking about it.
That's good.
Gotta see what comes up.
Yeah. Well, it's incredibly impressive. I feel like I said at the beginning, oh boy, I'd love to unpack how you got here, what things have been like while you've been here, and where are we going, and in terms of the book and all of the current stuff going on. And I'm impressed. I think we covered all 3 realms.
I think we covered a lot. So, any last words, call to action? Go ahead and flash the book up. I want to see the cover again. The Product is Docs, second edition.
Available on Amazon in Kindle and print.
They sell books?
Thanks so much for having me. It's always great to talk to either of you. I've never had the pleasure of talking to both of you at the same time. So I really appreciate it. Deadpool was incredibly well behaved.
He was uncharacteristically so, I would say.
Give that man a cookie. And thanks again for having me. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of that history and lifting the hood on Splunk and Splunk documentation. So thank you.
Anytime.
All right. Take care, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.